right, wonderful. Well, hello everyone, and thank you all for being here in the beautiful constituency of Calgary West. Before I start, I want to acknowledge that we are gathered today on the traditional territory of the signatories of Treaty 7, acknowledge the Métis people of Alberta, who have, of course, a deep connection with this land. My name is Mike Ellis. I'm the proud MLA for Calgary West, and I have been representing this wonderful community for the last 10 years. And I'm very proud and always humbled to be a representative of the people of Calgary West, and certainly extremely excited to be here as the MLA and as part of this great announcement. I want to thank Minister Nicolaides, of course, Premier Smith for inviting me here today to take part in this great announcement. I also want to thank Patricia Bolger, Chair of the Calgary Board of Education, and President Marilyn Dennis. Thank you so much for being here, Alberta School Boards Association. For being here. Every year, I of course see more and more people move to Calgary and Alberta. They raise their families. I know that all my caucus colleagues would all say the same thing about their constituencies. And with the new families, it's of course important that we continue to support our world-class education system so that their children have the support that they need to succeed in the classrooms. With 3 children of my own that grew up right here in Calgary West, I know I was myself a graduate of the old Ernest Manning High School that was located down by Westbrook Mall, but my daughter is a graduate of Ernest Manning and this school, very school that we're here, and my son is currently goes to this school, and I'm very proud to have them as part of his public education and the outstanding education that they receive specifically here in Ernest Manning High School. I myself have been a strong advocate for schools in West Calgary and the education that is currently happening in this province. Today's announcement is one that families and communities can truly celebrate. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Premier Danielle Smith to share some great news.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you to Mike Ellis, MLA for the area, and also our Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services. And before we begin today, I just want to touch briefly on the wildfire situation in the province. I know that Public Safety and Emergency Services Minister Mike Ellis, Joint Forestry and Parks Minister Todd Loewen, and wildfire officials about an hour ago to provide a formal update. I'd like to thank them for that. So if anyone has any additional questions, I may turn them over to Mike, who has the most recent information. But I do want to take this opportunity to thank all of our Alberta wildfire personnel for their dedicated work in fighting fires, and to all of the local authorities and emergency personnel who worked hard all through the night to help visitors and residents in Jasper to evacuate. I know it's a stressful time, it's full of uncertainty, but I'm also very pleased to know that the evacuation last night went as smoothly as we could hope for, and I know that reception centers are being set up for evacuees. So now, as always is the case, our government is ready to act to keep Albertans safe. And I'm confident that the generous neighborliness and compassion of Albertans will come through once again. So now to just turn to today's announcement. I'm pleased to join Education Minister Demetrios Nicolaides, Patricia Bolger, Marilyn Dennis, Fiona Gilbert, and a number of our caucus colleagues to share some good news for students and teachers who in just a few short weeks will be returning to our K-12 classrooms. Now, some students who aren't quite ready to give up the wonderful summer might be thinking, how could any news about going back to school be good news? And I do hear you, but while we can't do anything to prolong the summer vacation, we are here today to share good news about addressing pressures in Alberta's K-12 classrooms due to historic growth and enrollment. Because addressing an increasing student population is a big deal. Alberta is the fastest growing population in Canada. Now with a population of nearly 5 million, we have a strong economy, low taxes, good paying jobs, and safe communities. It's no wonder that more people are choosing to work here, move here, and raise their families here. Those families include a rapidly growing number of school-aged children. In fact, this fall, Alberta schools expect to welcome an historic number of additional students. We know that unprecedented enrollment growth combined with rising operational costs are creating real challenges in our schools. And unfortunately, these challenges often fall on our educators and school authorities who are committed to providing every student with the world-class education that they deserve. That's why Alberta's government is providing a one-time in-year funding boost to school authorities, allowing them to adjust their planning for the upcoming year. As part of the reason we needed to announce this now is so that they can work that into the planning for the end of August, early September when they begin. So funding can be used to hire more teachers and classroom support staff. It could also go towards easing their operational cost pressures. Our intent is to prevent cost pressures from impeding our ability to provide quality education. We want our educators' focus to remain on the classroom and on students. And for that to happen, we know that schools also need classroom space to accommodate the growing enrollment that they're facing. That's why we're investing in the construction and installation of up to 100 additional modular classrooms. The minister can talk about how many we already deployed, but there'll be 100 additional modular classrooms that we'll be deploying in the new upcoming school year. The units will create an additional 2,500 student spaces, and in addition, we're investing in the relocation of up to 50 modular classrooms to add an additional 1,250 student spaces in Alberta's fastest growing communities in the Calgary metropolitan region and in Edmonton. And as I mentioned, Minister Nicolaides will share more details in a moment. But first, I do want to say that Alberta's education system continues to be one of the best in the world. And that's thanks to the committed educators and support staff, the school boards and the school authorities, and all educational partners who have worked tirelessly to provide quality education for our students. Our government will continue to be here for you. We appreciate what you do every single day, and our government is here to support you as you continue educating and empowering the next generation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Minister Nicolaides.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us here today. Thank you, Minister Ellis, for hosting us in your constituency. I'm honored as well to be your neighbor just across Bow Trail here in Calgary Bow. Thank you to Patricia, Chair of Calgary Board of Education, Marilyn Dennis, President of Alberta School Boards Association. I saw Brian Zumlis with Calgary Catholic and other representatives from other school boards here as well. Thank you all for joining us, and other caucus colleagues. I saw Minister McIver. Thank you for joining us and being here today. I know Minister Ellis mentioned that he's a graduate of Ernest Manning, the old one down in Westbrook. I want to take the opportunity to say I'm also a graduate of Ernest Manning, but a more recent one, just for note. But as the Premier noted, our province is indeed growing at an unprecedented rate. It's truly historic, and for very good reason. We have a strong economy, low taxes, great paying jobs, and safe communities. Alberta is truly the best place in Canada to live, work, and raise a family. Last school year, our school boards across the province did an amazing job welcoming these new families that are coming to our province with open arms by providing their children with the supports that they need to succeed in the classroom. As we look forward to the next school year, we want to see our school boards continue their great work as they work through this historic enrollment pressure, and as they work through rising and unavoidable cost pressures. However, knowing the real pressures school authorities are facing, we must do more. And so, as the Premier noted, I'm happy to take the opportunity to share more details about today's $215 million injection that the Premier has just announced. I am confident that this new funding will help ensure that Alberta students continue to receive a world-class education. So I'll talk a little bit about enrollment and cost pressures. So to ensure money flows into the classroom through this period of historic growth, we're providing our school boards with an additional $125 million. This $125 million, as I noted, will go directly to our school boards to help them deal with increasing enrollment and increasing costs. I'll give you a quick overview. I should note that all school boards in the province will receive this increase, but I want to highlight how some of this funding will affect our metro school divisions. Calgary Catholic School Division, as a consequence of this injection, will receive $9.7 million in additional funding, Edmonton Catholic $10.5, Edmonton Public $22.4, and Calgary Board of Education $31.6. School boards can use this new funding to hire more teachers, classroom support staff, or to address rising costs due to inflation. More specifically, we will be increasing the base instruction grant rates by 1.1%, and we will be providing a 2% increase to targeted program services and supports across the board, which include grants for PUF, English as an additional language, and other specialized support areas. We're also increasing the funding rates for the Supplemental Enrollment Growth Grant. Through this approach, all students, including our youngest and most vulnerable learners, will receive the supports that they need. Secondly, I'd like to touch on the investment of additional modulars. The remaining of the $215 million, or $90 million, will be going to purchase and deliver up to 100 modulars and cover the cost to allow school boards to move 50 modulars that they currently have to higher priority areas. The new modulars will provide an additional 2,500 student spaces, and the relocated spaces will transfer up to 1,200 student spaces to our fastest growing communities. With this funding, Edmontonians will see 43 new modulars coming to their communities. Rocky View schools will receive 12 new modular classrooms and have the ability to relocate an additional 12. And Calgarians will see 45 new modulars. Our supplier has already begun work on building these new modulars, and we anticipate all 100 to be ready by the end of December, with some arriving at school sites as early as this September. The relocation of the 50 modular classroom units will begin immediately, with the intent of these being in place at the start of the school year. Today's announcement is on top of the 70 new modulars that were announced as part of Budget 24. In closing, I just want to note, we don't typically announce additional funding outside of the budget cycle, but continued growth in the system beyond original projections, along with rising cost pressures, requires action now so that our school authorities can plan for the upcoming school year, and our government is committed to taking steps when needed. We know that these steps will be welcomed by our partners because today's announcement ensures that they are in the best position to make sure our kids continue to receive a world-class education. Alberta's government is committed to modernizing and building schools, and I'll continue to work with my ministry colleagues and the Premier to ensure that all students receive a world-class education. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much. I'd like to say a welcome to a couple of other CB trustees here today, Trustee Close and Trustee Vukadinovich, as well as some of our Calgary Catholic colleagues and Rocky View trustee colleagues as well as Marilyn Dennis, who's playing a dual role with us today. So on behalf of the Calgary Board of Education, Board of Trustees, students, staff, and families, I would like to thank the Government of Alberta for today's announcement. We are so pleased to receive additional funding for the 2024-25 school year. These dollars will be directed to CB classrooms. This means hiring more teachers and funding resources students need to be successful in their learning. The CBE is a growing board. Over the past 3 years, we have welcomed more than 15,000 additional students and expect to enroll another 8,000 students this fall. Together, these increases are enough to fill more than 38 new elementary schools. Escalating enrollment means more CB schools are full, and we are so grateful for the additional modular classrooms we'll be receiving. Right now, more than 150 out of our 251 schools are at or over capacity, like Ernest Manning High School. These new learning spaces mean more students can attend a school close to home. So thank you again for these announcements today. We look forward to continuing to work together in the best interests of the students we all serve. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. It really is wonderful to see you all here today for this announcement. As mentioned, my name is Marilyn Dennis, and I have the privilege of serving as the president of the Alberta School Boards Association. and I am very pleased to be here this morning to bring remarks on behalf of our 61 locally elected public, Catholic, and Francophone school boards from across Alberta. Thank you to Premier Smith and to Minister Nicolaides for prioritizing this investment into our education system. Thank you also to Minister Ellis, and also to the Calgary Board of Education Board Chair, Patricia Bolger, and CBE trustees for hosting us in this beautiful facility. I also acknowledge trustees here from Calgary Catholic, from Rocky View Schools, and of course from the CBE. Your work is vital to the success of our education system, and thank you so much for the work that you do to support students. Today's announcement of increased operational funding will have a positive impact on all member school boards across this province, enabling them to hire more teachers and educational assistants. And the investment into new and relocated modular units will help accommodate historic enrollment growth, providing much needed learning spaces in our fastest growing communities. We appreciate that these funds will flow quickly and seamlessly to school divisions, allowing boards to make necessary preparations without delay. This will help to ensure that resources are in place when students return to classrooms this fall. As a trustee myself, I know that the focus of every trustee across this province remains on creating supportive and engaging learning environments where every student can thrive. We appreciate the government's recognition of the pressures that school boards are facing and these measures to help address them. ASBA values our strong relationship with Premier Smith and Minister Nicolaides, and we look forward to their ongoing support for Alberta's locally elected school boards as the local voice for our communities. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Marilyn. Thank you, Patricia, Premier, and Minister Nicolaides. I think before we go to questions, I just want to say, like, it is not only amazing, providing this funding to the kids that need it the most, especially in these the school divisions, but it was exemplified to me during the last stampede, the amount of people that are moving here from not just from Canada, but from internationally. I mean, Alberta truly is the place to be. Alberta truly is something special, and I'm proud to provide that support along with my colleagues. And with that, Sam, we'll turn it over to you for questions from the field.
Thank you. We'll begin our media Q&A now. We'll go with one question, one follow-up. Please state your name and outlet before asking your question. We'll start off here in the room before making our way to the phones. We'll go to the first at the mic.
Hi, it's Carrie Tate from the Globe and Mail. My first question is for the Deputy Premier, Mike Ellis. Minister Ellis, yesterday the Premier had disclosed she's gone to 3 hockey games as a guest of others, and she had said that it's up to staff and ministers to disclose their own information. So I'm wondering how many games you went to and who hosted you.
One game hosted by the Edmonton Oilers.
Okay, and for the Premier, thank you very much, Minister. For the Premier, yesterday you had said that you aren't responsible for your staff when we had asked them, and you had basically said if we had questions for other people, such as ministers and your staff, that we should ask them. We have been asking your staff repeatedly. We have been asking cabinet ministers. If you aren't responsible for the actions of your staff, who is?
Well, let me tell you how the ethics rules work. So first of all,
No, I understand the ethics
No, I don't think you
rules.
do. Because first of all, no government money has been spent on any of the inquiries that you're making. That's number one. Number two, what private individuals choose to do with their private money is not governed by the Ethics Commissioner. Number three, MLAs do have disclosure requirements. No MLAs are allowed to take private flights. Any expense under $250 does not have to be reported. Expenses of $250 to $1,000 do have to be reported in an annual disclosure to the Ethics Commissioner, and anything above $1,000 has to be reported within 60 days. And so those are the rules, and I expect every staff member and I expect every MLA to follow them.
Premier, you wrote the rules, you rewrote the rules, you made them easier to accept gifts, and your staff does not have to disclose those.
The staff have to disclose to the chief of staff, correct?
Right, but
Thank
not
you,
to
Carrie.
the
We're
public.
going to go to our next
Will
question
you disclose to the public what gifts your staff has accepted?
I have arranged a meeting. I've asked for a meeting with the ethics commissioner, as has the chief of staff to me. And if there are any interpretations that he needs to give me, so that there are any modifications to policy, I'm looking forward to getting his answers. But as I said, I expect all staff and all MLAs to follow the rules.
Thank you, Carrie. Let's go to our next question here.
Hi there, Jordan Canigan with CTV News. Question for the Premier. I heard Minister Ellis's response to this earlier, but when it comes to the wildfire situation and the emergency alert that was sent out yesterday, there was some incorrect messaging sent out initially saying that the wildfire was arriving at the town site within 5 hours, later corrected to people should be evacuated within 5 hours. What kind of oversight does the province have on those messages when communication is critical? And what do you say to those people who may have seen that message and been frightened or stressed?
Well, I saw the message and I was frightened and stressed, as Minister Ellis will attest to, and my chief of staff and my deputy minister and anyone I could reach at 11 o'clock at night to find out what was going on. I didn't want to go to sleep worried that Jasper might be hitting fire at 4 o'clock in the morning. And so it took a lot of work to realize that what they intended was to say that it took 5 hours to evacuate. We did some modeling and shared some information with them, and it's close. Like, make no mistake, there is certainly a fire threat on both sides of the city. But if worst case scenario happens, they'll be in real trouble in a few days. But we're going to do whatever we can to make sure that doesn't happen. We've put an active reach out to Parks Canada. Remember, this is a federal park, so it's federal jurisdiction. So we have to wait for them to invite us in. And we have put our hand out and said, we are happy to be here. We've staged equipment to Henton. We told them that we were prepared to help in whichever way they need us to, and they're taking us up on that offer. And same with the Jasper mayor. We've done a reach out to him as well to see what we can do to be able to support. But I have had a conversation with Minister Ellis on this, and it's it's a new process to allow municipalities to directly access the emergency alert. I think this is the first time that Jasper has done so, and so we may need to just have an additional step just to make sure that when information is going out, it's communicated accurately so that it doesn't cause that kind of panic. I mean, nobody wants to be in a state of panic at 11 o'clock at night, not knowing where they're going to go. So there clearly is some more work we need to do to get the information out accurately. But that being said, there's still a major fire risk, not only in Jasper, but in multiple other areas in northern Alberta, including around many oil sands sites. My minister, Todd Lowen, has been overseeing the firefight since the beginning of July is when it really began to get bad again. We're calling in international resources, and it really is still all hands on deck until we can get those fires doused. But I'm very pleased that the communication lines are open and everybody is working together on this.
Another question from a colleague, if I may. What do you believe will be the impact to our energy sector under another potential Donald Trump presidency, and how would that impact differ under Kamala Harris?
Well, look, we have a great relationship with America, regardless of who is in the White House. And that's demonstrated in the fact that last year, I think we ended up with a record amount of cross-border trade valued at $185 billion. So I would fully anticipate that would continue. I think our conversations with our Democrat partners would be along the lines of building out natural gas and hydrogen, carbon capture utilization and storage, ammonia, geothermal, small modular nuclear, all of those green energy solutions. And I think we have an opportunity to expand into their markets on that basis. I think our conversations with the Republicans would be more along the lines of, can we build more pipelines? Can we restart the Keystone XL pipeline? Can we look at other ways to be able to expand existing capacity? So there'll be different conversations, but I still think no matter who is in the White House, it'll be a very constructive, positive relationship. I would say, for instance, the Americans, even though the Michigan governor had been pressing to shut down Line 5, which would be devastating not only for Michigan, but also for Quebec and Ontario. The U.S. government did put in an amicus brief saying that they supported the interpretation of the 1977 pipeline treaty, that this pipeline, it was essential infrastructure and shouldn't be shut down. So that's under a Democrat presidency. So I think that there's a practicality there, and we certainly want to work with whoever is willing to work with us.
Thank you. I think we have one more at the mic here. Go ahead.
Yeah, Chris Brown, Cross Border Network. This money, it's new. Where is it exactly coming from? And in your announcement today, it seems you're focusing on the metro areas around Edmonton and Calgary. What about rural? Rural schools are underfunded right now. You go tour some rural schools, they're in disrepair and they need some updates. Doesn't seem like there's a lot of money going to rural schools in this new funding announcement.
Look, I'm sure the minister will want to talk about this too, but one thing, and I appreciate the advocacy of the ASBA on this, is that I think we were all surprised by the number of people who chose to make Alberta their home in 2023. We'd been having multiple quarters of net out-migration, and I think our funding model reflected that. We wanted to stabilize declining enrollment boards. I don't know that we anticipated that we would see 200,000 people choose to call Alberta their home in 2023 and for that to continue. And the good news is there's a lot of young families that are coming, so that's the positive side of things. But it also means extra pressure on the schools, and they've been very clear about some of the pressures that they're facing. So this is just an immediate way of addressing some of the pressure that we know is coming on rolling out more modulars, as well as providing the additional per student funding so that school boards can choose how they want to staff up. So it is new money. It's coming from, technically, it's it's coming from last year's surplus is how I look at it. I think you'll see with our government that rather than spend surpluses before they're realized, we want to realize surpluses and then have a constructive conversation about how to spend them. So that is how I had the conversation with my finance minister. But there's more to come. We know from what we have heard and from what we've seen from the capital plan submissions, that there is a significant amount of new school spaces that need to be built. We will fund every single student, but it'll be a much more comfortable learning environment if they can be if we can build the schools fast so that we're able to fund them in appropriate spaces. So the minister is currently working on a proposal for how we might accelerate some of that capital spend, but that's going to be a different conversation. And you're absolutely right, that impacts every single school board. We're seeing the pressures in particular in the big metros as well as the outlying areas, which is why I think the minister is prioritizing that. But there's more to come for all of the school boards. Did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, thank you, Premier. Just as a quick supplement, the 1% increase to the base grants are for all school boards, so that includes metro and rural schools as well. So they will also see a 1% increase to their base rates. So that applies to everyone. In addition, there's also that 1% increase, as we mentioned, it's across the board for all of our different grants. That includes specifically the Rural Small Schools grant. That's also being increased by 1%, which of course specifically targets small rural schools. Excuse me. In addition, in the last budget cycle, we were able to move ahead a number of full construction projects outside of our metro regions, specifically a new K-5 school in Blackfalds, a new school in Fort McMurray, a Francophone school in Fort McMurray, a replacement school in Medicine Hat, a new school in Nanton, a new school in Red Earth Creek. So we're definitely committed, but of course we have a lot of challenges. We do absolutely have aging infrastructure, primarily in some of our smaller and older communities. And we also have historic growth affecting primarily our metropolitan regions and zones. So we do want to make sure we do recognize both of those challenges, and we do want to try our best to address both of them indeed.
So you've ripped the Band-Aid off, so I'm going to ask the follow-up question, because I see Minister McIver here as well as Minister of Municipal Affairs. Is there going to be an injection into municipalities as well? Because they're struggling as well with infrastructure deficits, while the schools are being struggled with. Infrastructure funding needs to be upgraded as well, because if you talk to Tyler Gandam, Paul McLaughlin, they'll both say the same thing. And I apologize for getting Minister McIver over here, but they need to go hand in hand, do they not?
Yeah, well, obviously we can't speak to future budget considerations or decisions, but since Minister McIver is here as well, perfectly timed, I'll let him address that for you. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the question. As municipalities are aware that something they've long advocated for is to have their annual capital funding from the province go up or down with the provincial revenue. And as of April 1st this year, that the answer from our government is yes. So now some years it'll go down, but this next year coming up, it'll be a 14% increase. And I think the year after that, it'll be 2 or 3% decrease. I think that final number will be determined by our final accounting of the province's, finances from last year. In addition, this year we added $60 million over 3 years, $20 million a year, to deal with growth pressures. Both two things to deal with sustainability of municipalities that for whatever reason are just having a tough time making it now, but also to deal with those ones that are successful in attracting growth, because sometimes when you attract growth in municipality, it comes with expenses like expanding perhaps to water treatment or wastewater treatment, or maybe improvements to roads or intersections. There's a whole number of things in municipalities that do that could be affected when you bring in a new business or successfully bring in some new economic development. So we are making steps that way, and that's this year's budget. And as the Minister Nicolaides correctly said, you're going to have to wait for next year's budget.
But you just signed the $256 million.
Yeah, indeed. We did extend a program that has been going on for about 15 years with the federal government. It started out as called the gas tax, and through a couple of iterations, it's now the Canada Community Building Fund, which we successfully negotiated an update with the federal government, and we're grateful with them for that. But after we had to talk them into some amendments. It was always a very flexible fund for municipalities where they could basically spend it on whatever capital infrastructure needs that they happen to have, almost without limit. And then the federal government this year changed it and added a whole bunch of very restrictive conditions. So we didn't sign off on it right away, and we went to work on behalf of municipalities to A, make sure they got that money, but B, make sure they got it under more favorable circumstances. And I would say we were successful in talking to our federal counterparts and having them realize, and we're grateful they did realize, that Alberta municipalities need more similar flexibility to what they had before. It's not exactly the same, but we got it in the neighborhood of where it has been. So feel very happy that we were able to successfully negotiate an extension for 10 or 15 years. And if you need that clarification, I'll get it for you, but it's a multi-year $265 million funding program for Alberta municipalities, which will flow through the province. And for those municipalities watching, yes, we will get the paperwork done as quick as we can and flow it as quick as we can, but our federal partners who are providing the money require some reporting, so we will have to do that reporting, and we'll get all that in place and get the money out the door just as quick as we can.
Thank you for the cameo, Minister McIver.
And I'll just add to that as well. I mean, it may have an impact as well on students because many of them use public transit. But at the Council of the Federation last week, when we were talking about the federal government needing to step up with a new infrastructure program, they've come up with a $30 billion transit program, and we are going to do everything we can to make sure Alberta gets its per capita share. Right now it's being proposed as an application-based program, but we have got plans to take the Blue Line to the airport, figure out a similar solution in Edmonton, develop commuter rail between some of our major cities like Airdrie and Okotoks, and potentially start figuring out a way to integrate all of this for a broader-based commuter rail program. We also, they have a special rural stream, so we'll be wanting to talk with rural Alberta about the way in which we can perhaps develop some kind of public transit solution that maybe it makes more sense for people coming into the big city if they need doctor's appointments and that sort of thing. But there's a special rural route for that as well, and that may be able to assist us in managing some of the transportation pressures as well. So we're very keen to work with the feds on trying to find a way to caution that, because what they normally do is they would put money forward, we would put money forward, and then the party that we're partnering with would put money forward. So that could potentially be $10 billion over the next 10 years if we're successful.
And we have time for a couple more questions. We're going to head over to the phones, though. Operator, could you put through our first caller, please?
No callers?
Operator, can we
I think your first question comes from Jonathan Bradley with Western Standard. Please go ahead.
Hello, Premier Smith. Thank you for taking my question. So you spoke about $215 million being allocated towards the fund to hire more teachers and educational assistants, and that it will be all school boards will be eligible for it. How will this funding be divided?
It is going to be split between the operational funding and the modulars, and I think the minister has the breakdown on how that would work. I think it's $115 million for the operational funding and $100 million for the modulars.
No, I mean for like the school, like which school boards will be getting it.
Right.
Like, how is that decided?
I just wanted to make sure that we were just using the right number. So it's $125 million, which is the stabilizing money. The balance of that is the modulars. I think you've got a pretty good idea of where the modulars are going. Do you have some idea of how you're going to divvy up the $125 million?
Yeah, thank you. With respect to the modulars, the addition of the 100 modulars will be for our metro school divisions. The $125 million that is going to increase operating funding is going to all school authorities. So they will see a 1% increase in all of their base rates. And all school authorities will see a 2% increase in some of the specialized learner support grants that I mentioned, including supports for English as an additional language, PUF supports, and other areas.
Okay, and my follow-up pertains to the modular classrooms. So you spoke about these classrooms intending to enhance education. How do you believe that modular classrooms will make the educational experience for students more enjoyable?
Sure. Well, the short answer is, of course, the modular classrooms, and I never really like calling them modular classrooms. I prefer to call them prefabricated classrooms. If you haven't seen them, I mean, when I think of a modular classroom, I think of a trailer. These aren't. I mean, I got to tour the facility where they make them, and they are quite exceptional. So I would really characterize them as prefab classrooms. The way in which they're going to help enhance student learning is simply by helping to alleviate space needs and pressure. Of course, there are many schools, as our colleagues from Calgary Board of Education noted, that are at very high utilization rates. So if we can deploy additional modulars, it means that we can have less students, reduce class sizes in particular areas, and of course, provide more direct supports to students who need it.
Thanks. Thank you, Jonathan. And we have time for one last question here. Operator, could you put through our next caller, please?
Your next question comes from the line of Elisa Carpenter with Global News. Please go ahead.
Hi there. I just wanted to ask about the education money. We've been pretty specific on the number of modulars and, how those will be divvied up. But there's been mention a couple of times that this will allow for more teachers and educational assistants. So do we have a number on how many more teachers this will allow us to hire? And the follow-up to that would be, will they be in place by this September, or are we looking at next school year?
Well, I'd say a couple of things. Part of the reason we can't be precise is if a school board chooses to use 100% of the dollars for teachers, that'll be one number. If they choose to use 100% of the dollars for education assistants, that'll be another number. I can have Demetrios comment on that, but then maybe Marilyn, you might have some insight into what the split is likely to be and where the pressures are. But our intention in announcing it today was that we'd been, of course, reading that school boards are making the staffing decisions now, and we wanted to make sure that they had the certainty of having these dollars so that they could offer their contracts. First, Minister Nicolaides.
Yeah, thank you, Premier. I think just to reiterate the Premier's point, I think the Premier noted it quite well. In the past, sometimes we have provided targeted funding specifically for the purposes of hiring teachers or hiring educational assistants. Today's funding announcement is a broad increase to the general base rates. And so the school boards have the complete autonomy and discretion to determine how they want to allocate those funds. I'll let Marilyn Dennis and others speak to their operations, but of course, a significant component of their operating costs deals with staff. So they may be looking to hire additional educational assistants or teachers, or they may be looking to increase funding to a particular program, increasing funding to dual credit opportunities, for example, if that's something that's of particular importance to a particular community, so that they have the complete discretion to determine how those funds are allocated. But perhaps Marilyn, who's in a better position, can tell us a little bit more about funding decisions at a school board level. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It is a great question. I think it's very difficult to be precise. As the Premier mentioned, individual school boards have the autonomy to make the decisions necessary for the students that they serve within their division. And so our school board trustees will work closely with school administration to help determine how those resources should be deployed to best serve the students that they have in front of them coming this fall. Part of the strength of this announcement, frankly, is that this money is coming before the school year starts. And so already school divisions would have been working on their hiring processes in the springtime of the end of this last school year. And so they would already have a really good idea on where some of their pressure points would be. But again, trustees will work alongside their administration in terms of how to deploy those dollars.
Thank you. Alyssa, did you have a follow-up?
I'm good. Thank you very much.
Good.
Perfect. And that's all the time we have for questions today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.